We had 2 teepees and a tent and a kitchen area. And we only went to town every 2 weeks for supplies and showers. So in between we would get clean by going into a sweat lodge. We'd go in and sweat and come out and run through the snow naked and jump in the ice pack river. It was awesome. And I didn't know it was spiritual. I didn't know anything spiritual about it. I was pretty much agnostic at that point. A major teacher I had was named Tracy. She was a 6-foot Lakota, beautiful woman. Very humble. All my teachers didn't care if you knew their names. Kind of steered around the ones with the big egos. And I liked them because they reminded me of my own self and my own big ego. That's shadow work. That's some shamanic journeying there. We'll talk about that another time. But Tracy, she was a big teacher around Sweat Lodge. She was very, very traditional, more traditional than any traditionalist I've known. But she was not closed-minded, and she was able to embrace that I was clearly being guided to do it differently. And one of her first teachings about Lodge was that the Lodge is alive, and that's when I started realizing it truly is. It can be whatever you want. It could be a pile of sticks that you break up and start a fire with so you can cook your s'mores. And she'll say, sure, go ahead. And it can be the womb of the Mother Earth. It can be the safest place in the world. Babies tend to fall asleep in there. It's warm and wet and loving like the womb. Lodge means womb, by the way. And most of our ancestors did sweat all around the world. It was given to the people. She knows it's hard to be. The Mother Earth knows it's hard to be a two-legged. This newest evolution with critical thinking, manual dexterity, free will. So she gives her womb to crawl into to feel her love, and like that. Well, the next day after my first sweat, I went home and looked at my apartment and said, everything has to go. I was just a different person, and it was all shoulds. It was all should stuff. You should have a couch. Why? I don't need a couch. Nobody comes over here. I don't need a couch. I don't want a couch. I got rid of everything and then just started picking what I liked most. And except I did leave a bed in the bedroom for my son. But I never slept in the bed. I always just slept right on the floor, as close to the earth as I could get. And not long after that, I came across this beanbag, and I just loved it. And it became my bed and my chair, and I would take it camping, and I would sleep on it in my car, and I would sleep on it on the ground, just me and my beanbag. And so that's the story, and that's still here 30 years later. It's still part of our ceremonies. After I fell in love with her and devoted myself to the earth, then immediately, and I asked, how can I be of service? Within 2 weeks, storytellers and teachers were coming onto my path right and left, get me into this and get me into that, and protests with the Audubon Society and teaching in grade schools and sharing these ways of spirituality. And for public schools, you got to not say the word spirit, so I didn't, but I got the word out. And just devoted to helping the Mother Earth and to helping others try to experience what I experienced with her, this one-on-one personal relationship with her. I became a fire kid, started tending fire for this. My sweat leader was teaching me all these teachings about the fire is alive, and you can watch it and learn its dance. And each fire is alive. It's like us. Each one is its own unique self, and it has its own unique dance like no other. When it's served all it can, its remains goes back to the earth, and its energy pattern is released. Just like I started getting calls from lodges I never heard of to come and tend fire. Always on donation, never charged for anything. In fact, I wouldn't even accept money for a few years. And then they had a group that wanted to sweat, and they asked me if I would lead the sweat. And I was a shock. I had not considered being a sweat leader. I wouldn't have chosen it. But I couldn't. I felt it wasn't them asking me, it was the Mother Earth guiding them to ask me. And for that, I couldn't. There was no question. Not to go out and advertise or promote or encourage, just to be at the door if she sent somebody to the lodge. So that's been my commitment ever since. Some Native American religions can be like other religions, and it's just not the way I was taught. I was taught more shamanic way and doing what works, and everybody is sacred. Nobody's closer to God than anybody else, kind of thing. So I don't say anybody's way is right or wrong. I just know what the way she speaks to me, the teachings she gives me, I feel are to pass on. They're not really teachings, they're reminders. And they're for everybody, not for me. They help me, and once they help me, and once I learn to apply them and help my own self, then I can share them and maybe they'll help somebody else. And that's how I hold these ways. She's the teacher. After the lodge, a few months later, I started waking up in the morning sobbing at her beauty. And then after a while, I started waking up sobbing at what we were doing to her. And I did sobbing in guilt over what Europeans did to the Indians. And then I realized everybody's ancestors were annihilated.
How did you make it?
Well, I took two of these rings, these drum rings, and glued them together. And I got a cowhide and cut out some around and some of the strand, a big long strand, and then after you soak the leather for a long time, and then you tie one part to a tree and you pull and you lean and you put as much weight on it as you can to stretch it out. Poke the holes in the cover and you just start lacing it through the center and through the handle here, and wrap it around, make a nice comfortable handle to hold it with. And tie it up. You get it tight, so you get it pulling and stretching and pulling and little by little going around and around and around and around. And then you tie it off and you let it dry. The tree made the stick, 20 holes in the canvas, which is a particular medicine wheel. When I was in the womb, my mom was smoking 5 packs a day, so I came into a sea of nicotine, just kind of numb, floating. I had tried to quit smoking. I actually got bladder cancer about 8 years ago, and it was aggressive. They said it would return, and it hasn't, which I'm really grateful for. But that didn't stop me from smoking. So that's how serious the addiction was. And tried hypnotism and a few other things. Then really at a crossroads with my addiction, about 5 years ago, I decided, I did a vision quest, 2 vision quests, and a 27-mile walkabout, just to try to be with myself and the earth and get some courage to let go of that tobacco, or change my relationship to it, I should say. So on one of my vision quests, I felt in contact with the fetus and realized that I needed to go back all the way. I actually had a little bit of advice from an elder too, to go back all the way to the first sign of life and start over. And so that's what I decided to do. Tracy, who I mentioned earlier, she felt that lodges should not be left standing. She felt that if you want to do a lodge, you set an intention, you go to the creek bed and get the willows and you build the lodge. You go to the desert and get the stones. You do your ceremony and then you return the stones to the desert, return the willows to the creek bed. You don't leave a lodge standing. That's where she was also able to embrace that I was clearly called to do it differently. But I decided to do that because I heard the power of the intention in doing it that way. So I decided to do that, to not necessarily quit smoking, but to care about myself so much that I didn't want to do anything harmful to this body anymore. That was the intention. So the day came, I found someone who offered their land to do it on in Topanga, and I went to the creek bed and got the willows, made offerings, and took the willows, built the lodge big enough to lay down in and to stand up in. And then I went to the desert and got 99 stones. Wasn't sure why. I hadn't planned on, didn't know what I was going to do in the lodge yet. And returned and built, and then I went into the lodge. My plan was to go into the lodge for 4 days, a 4-day vision quest inside a lodge. Vision quest is a whole other story, but so I planned on spending 4 days in the dark with myself and the Mother Earth. And so I went, and the time came, and I made my offerings. I went into the lodge, and in the dark for 4 days and 4 nights. It was hell and it was heaven. On the third night, I had asked a friend to come and start bringing me stones. So at sundown on the third night, It was 4 days, one for each direction, east, south, west, north. So on the third night, the west night, the round for death and rebirth and sweat lodge and stones. The firekeeper came. I heard the match light to light the fire, and then when it was ready, he opened the door, started bringing me stones. Excuse me. And I did 10 rounds from sundown to sunrise. I did 10 rounds, one for each month of gestation, and the 10th month for the first being an air-breathing two-legged after birth, basically. And the first round was the most powerful, I would say, where I held the fetus. I was with the first few cells, dialoguing with them, letting them know what's going to happen, letting him know what's going to happen. You're going to be hated, I said. And they said, what does that mean? And I had a flash and a panic go through me at that moment. So just kind of held the fetus through the months, and then into the first month of air breathing two-legged. And then sunrise, and he opened the door and left. And I went out and spent a couple of hours outside, and then went back in, and I just, as soon as I laid down and closed the door, I just started kissing myself, kissing my arms, and so grateful to be myself and for everything that's happened. It's very beautiful, very powerful. Spent the next day and a half in the lodge, and my partner Alicia and I had arranged that she was coming back from a workshop on the day I would be coming out. The lodge has several coverings of blankets, several layers of blankets. The first layer was all white, and it covered the door as well, and then a few other layers to darken it. So the plan was she was going to come back and take all the blankets off just before I'm ready to come out. Take all the blankets off except the white layer. So I'd just be letting in the light from darkness to light. So that's what she did. And she did that, and I waited a little while so she would be gone. And I stuck my head up through the spirit pathway just to look around. There she was in the distance. We were able to give each other a little love wave. So that was really beautiful. I have not heard this song in person. It came from a recording of an old elder from long ago singing this. Lakota love chant. Yo yo eh ha we oh hi ya. Yo yo eh ha we oh hi ya. Ya eh ya we ah ya. Yo ya eh ya we ah hen na. We ah ho hi yo. We ah hen ya. Yo yo eh ah we oh hi ya. Yo yo eh ah we oh hi ya. Ya eh ya we ah ya. Yo ya eh ya we ah hen na. We ah ho hi yo. We ah hen ya. Yo yo eh ah we oh hi ya. Yo yo eh ah we oh hi ya. Ya eh ya we ah ya. Yo ya eh ya we ah hen na. We ah ho hi yo. We ah hen ya. Yo yo eh ah we oh hi ya. Yo yo eh ah we oh hi ya. Ya eh ya we ah ya. Yo ya eh ya we ah hen na. We ah ho hi yo. Aho takuyasu. I got there near sundown, and I took these 99 stones one at a time and took them way out and put them in a big spiral on the desert floor and thanked them. And then I went across the highway, up a road up to Kennedy Meadows, about 45 minutes up. I think it's about 7,000 foot elevation, 100-year-old pine trees, nobody around, campgrounds, and no people. And so I spent the next 4 days alone with the trees and myself. Still hard, still struggling with the tobacco addiction. It was really hard, really difficult. And then by the 4 days, I was feeling a lot better and stronger. And coming back home, I stopped off in Palmdale, which is where I lived as a child and where the accident happened. I just wanted to see where that had happened and just feel it out a little more, because I had been taught that shamanic ways say that we're all potential shaman, and when we learn what the wounds came to teach us as part of our curriculum, we learn and grow from them, and our wounds become blessings. I called my sister, and she remembered where it was. She told me the corner where it happened, and I knew my brother had gone around the corner too fast and ran into a telephone pole. And he wasn't driving age yet, and my dad took a lot of guilt for that all his life. So I went to the spot and looked at it from 100 yards away, or a ways away, and just kind of imagined, tried to remember, and then I walked over to the spot right where it probably happened, right near a telephone pole. And I looked down in the street and imagined the boy crying, and I saw the boy crying. I saw him in his flash. I saw the boy bloody and screaming. And at first, the first feeling was deep love and compassion, and a love I had never felt for myself before. And that immediately transformed. It was the next experience was of the shaman doing this for me, because being stitched up without anesthesia sounded a lot easier than quitting smoking.